What's up everybody, my name is Greg Peters, you are watching the Car Passion channel. Today I want to go over some of the issues that I've had with the Miata so far, and I'm also going to fix one of those problems live for you guys. It's information that you are going to want if you're thinking about buying a Skunk To Throttle body. So as of the filming of this video, the Miata engine has 307 miles on it, and with literally hundreds of places that this engine could be leaking oil, air, water, and fuel from, I knew that everything wouldn't go perfect. But the engine itself is still running strong. So as you can see, we're still running naturally aspirated style. I am running with the wastegate propped open as far as I can get it, so the turbo doesn't spin too awfully fast. So some of the first problems I came across were coolant leaks, and fixing those was as simple as tightening up the hose clamps in the system. A lot of times with brand new hosing and clamps, once you go through a few heat cycles, they will start leaking, so you want to go through and check everything. The engine's been running a little warm, especially in stop and go traffic and at idle, and it's probably to do with the fact that I do only have one fan, and with only one fan in place, there's a gaping hole in the shroud, and that fan is sucking a lot of air through there instead of sucking it through the radiator as it would if there were two fans. So I'm gonna throw that other fan in and see if we can fix that problem. So one of the scariest problems was seeing that the car was dripping oil every time I parked it. And upon further inspection, there was oil all over the top of the transmission and the sides of the block. After reading some horror stories about the chromatic head gasket, I figured that I might have to replace it with a stock one, which I'm not worried about as far as generating power. I just really didn't want to replace a head gasket. So I contacted Brian at Fab9 Tuning, asked him about if he'd ever had any problems with oil leaking. For those of you that don't know, his NB is over 500 wheel horsepower. He's done a couple motors in his day, and he said despite the ARP head stud kit coming with instructions to torque to 65 foot-pounds, he builds all his motors at 76 to 78 foot-pounds. So I pulled the valve cover and I retorqued the head, hoping that it would stop the oil leak. Unfortunately, retorquing the head did not stop the oil leak. It was just as bad, but luckily I found the problem. See, on the back of the head, way down in there, there's one Allen plug that you can see and another one perpendicular to it on the back of the head, and then there's another one of those over on the driver's side. This one in particular, the one that you can't see the head to, was dripping on that VVT oil hardline, and then going down here underneath the intake manifold, and it was just dripping all over the block, and it looked like it was coming from underneath the manifold, which to me meant that it was coming from the head gasket. So I got tricked. So what I did is I took those little plugs out, cleaned them off, cleaned the threads off, put sealant in them, and put them back in, and now it's all dry back there. No more leaking oil, crisis averted, no head gasket, and we're ready to run again. There's a little better view with that inspection mirror on the back of the driver's side of the head there. Just a little Allen plugs that block off the oil galleys, so that problem's fixed. Couple more issues relating to the throttle. Number one, the throttle cable kept popping out of the Skunk 2 bracket, and that's because this bracket is a little bit thinner than the stock one, so the spacer between these two washers is too fat, and even when you tighten these nuts down, you could just pull this out. So what you could do is either shave down the spacer inside here, or what I did is just pinch down the Skunk 2 bracket for now, so now I can't pull it out. But it was pretty sketchy because I was in the fast lane on the freeway and I got stuck on the fast lane shoulder, which cars are flying by like 80 miles an hour, trying to figure out how to get my throttle cable to stick back in there, but it's all good now. So if you're running this manifold and this bracket, that is one thing that you want to be concerned with. The last thing that's pretty annoying that I'm actually going to show you guys how to fix right now is I'd come to a stop and the car would be idling fine, about 1,000 RPM. And then I'd come to a stop a minute later and it would be idling at 2,000 RPM. And it would seem to be random. It would just idle high and low and high and low. But what I found out is that the Skunk 2 throttle body was actually sticking open a millimeter or two, causing a high idle. And I've heard several reports of this going on. I'm gonna show you a quick and easy fix on how to avoid that. Just gonna take a 13 and remove the shaft nut. And there's two more washers in there, so be careful not to drop those. There's one, little lock washer. And then the other one is a washer with a funny middle shape, so just pay attention to how those go on. to remove this piece completely, this is what we're gonna modify. You can see it's got a hole for the spring in there, and all I'm gonna do is drill another hole for the spring that's gonna give it some more tension. The throttle feel with the Skunk 2 spring is lighter than stock, and it just feels better to have extra tension on there, but it's also gonna help the throttle plate close all the way every time. Make sure you put the spring into the new hole. It is going to be a little bit harder to get this on now. So I get that hook up on there. Pops into place. Oh, that has a much nicer feel to it, much more tension. And even when you close the throttle lightly, it should seal up. And I also put a drop of Loctite in that nut because I really don't want this thing to come loose. Doesn't have to be crazy tight. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this little video. I hope you learned something, and really, no matter how simple or complex your build is, and no matter how new you are at working on cars or how experienced, you can always expect to have some kind of problems, but it's just what builds you as a mechanic and, you know, helps build your skill and is going to give you future problem-solving abilities. So drop a like on this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. We got intercooler piping coming in just a couple days, and then we can start boosting. Peace out, guys.
Back from the dead.